First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my mom my brother and I were not her pawns to rename when it worked for her? I, 18 female, lost my dad when I was 8. My brother Cole was 6. My sister was 2 and my brother Logan was 4 months old. 2 years after our dad died, our mom remarried. Our mom then went through the process of trying to change all our names to his. Cole and I objected, and we actually spoke out in court saying we didn't want our names changed. We didn't want to be adopted, which my sister and Logan eventually were after they gave up on me and Cole. And the judge agreed with us since we were used to our last name. It was always a point of contention, and our mom refused to acknowledge our last name anyway and always called us the Stepdad's last name, family. Always. And she would always try to get extracurriculars and stuff to use her name instead of our name, in a non-legal sense, which bugged the crap out of us. One of my teachers used to write my legal name, but call me by my stepdad's name because she and my mom were friends, and it sucked. They never stopped asking us to change it, and then around Christmas, my brother wanted to be registered for some professional art classes, and our mom tried to bargain with him that she would sign him up for the classes if he would agree to change his name. My brother said it was fine, and he wouldn't take the classes. Our mom freaked out. She called me, and she told me that we were behaving like brats and hurting her and our stepdad's feelings. I told her she needed to stop, that we weren't her little pawns to rename whenever she liked, that she had to accept we had our dad's name, and her husband was never going to be our dad, and that she had driven us both away, as well as ruined the relationship with our younger siblings, because they see us as bad for not changing our names. I told her that all of this comes back to her and trying to force us to change something we had grown used to, our last name. She told me she was doing the best thing for the family. I rejected that and told her she was doing the best thing for her, not us. We haven't talked since, and my brother said she's still pissed as hell at us both because of it. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top judgment. Not the a-hole. She told me that we were behaving like brats and hurting her and our stepdad's feelings. She is the one acting like that, not Opie. It's always projection, isn't it? Behaving like a brat and hurting the feelings of those close to you. Did the mother accidentally stumble into a room with a mirror? Not the a-hole. She is just trying to erase the fact that her husband is not your father and has consistently refused to accept your own feelings on the matter. I'm assuming by adoption, you mean your younger siblings were adopted by stepdad so that he would legally be their father while your mother stays as their mother. If so, then that would not be an a-hole move, since the distinction would matter for things like healthcare. Example, stepdad would not be able to consent on behalf of a minor, but legal adoption dad would. They wanted him to adopt all 4 of us, but Cole and I didn't want it. They delayed adopting the younger 2, but eventually realized they would never get consent for all 4 of us to be adopted. So he adopted them. Your mom is the clear antagonist in this story, but where is her husband in all of this? He can be just as forceful and pushy. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for lawyering up when my ex and her husband started divorce proceedings? Little background. I was deeply closeted when I married my ex-wife. I came out right after my daughter was born, and we continued on in what was basically an open marriage for 2 years, until she met her soon-to-be ex-husband and told me she wanted a divorce. It was amicable, and we co-parented with only the bare bones of a custody agreement for 10 years. I met my husband 2 years later, and we got married a couple months after it was legal. My son, then 12, was an honorary groomsman. The 4 of us get on amicably, and I will fully admit that my ex's husband has as much right to call himself their dad as I do. He cheated on her is the thing. My son, 16, was the one to discover the text that the couple lewd pictures to another woman when he was helping my ex's husband set something up on his laptop. So where we stand now is that my son is old enough that custody agreements don't apply to him, and as a result, he's living with me and my husband until things blow over. My daughter is a different story, as she's 13. So in the anticipation that the ex's husband would want partial custody, I hired a lawyer to defend my parts of the custody agreement we already had. I don't want to see her less than I already do. I don't want a stricter agreement than what we already have. And I don't want to get drawn into my ex and her soon-to-be ex's fight. So in preparation, I lawyered up. Ex of X took that news poorly and posted this whole rant on Facebook about people taking advantage of other people's misfortune and indirectly called me a vulture. He brought up the fact that my son is living with me currently and acted as if I was trying to deprive him of his kids. So, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. The advantage of step-families like yours is that the children have more than two loving parents. But the disadvantage is that if one of the parents divorce, the former step-parent now legally has no rights to the children in most cases. It's wise of you to get a lawyer if the custody arrangement for your children is being revisited. And save a screenshot of that Facebook post to show the lawyer. Not the a-hole. His kids? They ain't his kids. Don't get involved with someone else and expect to still play house. Dude, this is why this sub sucks. In every post about problems with step-parents and step-kids, they are told they are the a-holes if they don't treat and love their step-kids exactly like they do their own bio-kids. And that the entire step-family, step-grandma and grandpa, are complete a-holes if they don't treat them the same. Example, paying for bio/adopted kids schooling and not step-kids. Bigger presents for bio-grandkids. The difference is, and why lots of step-parents don't treat them the same, is they aren't their parents if a divorce happens. Unless the step-parent has adopted a step-kid, there is a high chance they will not be allowed to see them anymore. Lots of step-families realize that their relationship with the step-kids only lasts until the bio-parent decides it ends. That can make bonding even more difficult, and in that many step-kids have two parents already. Too long didn't read. The stepdad was a freaking a-hole for cheating, but to say they ain't his kids when they were his kids up until the divorce is messed up to the kid and to the adult. Parent-kid relationships don't end when a divorce paper is signed and it's, "Bye, I know I treated you like you were my own, but see ya." A kid doesn't understand why step-parent who was their parent in all the ways their bio-parent was, suddenly isn't anymore. Talk about damaging a kid. Don't punish a kid because of a divorce. Unless there was abuse or the kid hated a step-parent. This case, it sounds like from what Opie said, this ex-step-parent was a great parent. Not the a-hole. They are your kids unless he adopted them, which it doesn't sound like he did. Also, protect your retirement right now. Your ex, if she is broke after the divorce, might become desperate for funds and try to revisit your divorce settlement. Some states allow this, Florida for one, some don't. Be proactive on this. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my ex have anything of our daughter's belongings? My daughter was born with a chronic heart condition. We spent months in the hospital. At the time, my ex started complaining that this was too much, and her family suggested that she get some rest from the stress aside from postpartum. Her family said they were worried for their daughter. However, they didn't care much about their granddaughter. They told me that their daughter's physical and emotional health was more important than my daughter's. Her family hated me, and I know that they secretly wished that my daughter die so they could get rid of me and have nothing to do with me. My ex's family didn't let me talk to my ex about our daughter. They even sent me texts telling me they can't wait for this to be over and for their daughter to move on. I'm not gonna lie, I resent them for that. When my daughter was 6 months old, my ex left the apartment and left our daughter at my mom's house. She said she couldn't live with me because of those circumstances. She just couldn't handle the responsibility and saw no future with me. We were only engaged at the time, so I got the ring back and I became my daughter's only present. It was only me and my mom at the hospital. At some point, I had to beg my ex's family for money, but I was being told to get the hell out of their house and not come back several times, telling me it wasn't their problem since their daughter rented it. They called me pathetic and even said they'd get the state to take my daughter because of how irresponsible I was. I stopped talking to them. I had to do all I can and come up with the money. My daughter had undergone 2 surgeries and medication didn't improve her condition. She eventually passed away 3 months ago. She was only 3.5 years old. Didn't even get a decent birthday celebration that I was planning for her 4th year. I was devastated. I felt like my ex and her family won. This past week, I was surprised to see my ex at my door and lashing out and calling me nasty names. She kept yelling at me, asking how I could do this to her, and not let her know that her baby passed away and that had to hear from a mutual friend. I didn't want to talk, so I told her to leave. I had so much anger from seeing her, and there was no guarantee I wasn't going to do anything stupid. Her family played along in berating me and calling me cruel. Yesterday, she showed up with her sister wanting to take some of my daughter's belongings. I refused and told her to leave. My mom was there. She told me to stop and let her in to take what she wanted, but I yelled at her and told her that she has no rights because everything was bought by me. Despite not having money, I managed to buy her toys and clothes, while my ex and her family turned their back on their own blood. She's now talking to my friends to pressure me into letting her take my daughter's things. I kept ignoring them, but at this point, there's no avoiding it. The reason her family never accepted me is because they think they're better than me. They claim that I was with her for money. I was 25 and she was 30 when we started dating. To them, that was an obvious sign that I was with her for money, and they made sure I got nothing, even when they saw me struggling trying to provide for their granddaughter. They controlled my ex, banned me from moving to her place, and insulted my living situation, and cut any support to their own daughter to get her to realize that she made a mistake and leave. But with our daughter in the picture, things got complicated. But they got what they wanted eventually. Now for the top comments. Not Dayhole. She chose to not be involved in the kid's life. That's on her. She's not entitled to souvenirs now. She doesn't want a souvenir. Those are for memories. What could she possibly have memories of? She wants to resell them for cash. Not Dayhole. She effectively abandoned her living child. And she's come back to what? Keep the scraps of her memory? With the money you used to buy those things. She should have been there to have solid real memories when your daughter was alive and needed her mother. I'm so sorry this happened to you. I wish you all the comfort and peace in your time of grieving. There's no peace at this point. I keep refusing and she keeps pushing. I'm literally losing it and her family won't leave me alone. I guess they only care about looking good to outsiders, constantly claiming confusion and playing innocent. I'm done with their BS. And lately, I have been thinking about moving away, but now I'm seriously considering it. Not Dayhole. Your ex is a pretty poor excuse for a human being, and it seems that's probably hereditary. Demanding things from your daughter that you purchased is about as low as you can get, given the circumstances. The only items I would let her anywhere near were items that she or her family purchased. If you've got anything that they provided, perhaps post or courier them to them. As if it was me, I probably wouldn't want anything from them in my living space. But I would not let any of them enter your property, ever. Take out a restraining order or report them to police if you need to. Just make sure they keep their distance. Condolences for your loss. It's a pretty difficult scenario to have to go through. The last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my wife that it is her fault that our son doesn't tell her anything? Me, 45 male, and my wife, 42 female, are currently going through a divorce. We have been married for 17 years, and the past few haven't been the best in my opinion. We have 3 kids, 11 female, 14 female, 17 male, and the custody has been a big issue and has caused many arguments. The main argument is happening because our son, unprompted, asked if I could have sole custody of him. This request absolutely floored my wife. She couldn't understand why this was happening and accused me of coercing our son. The thing is that my wife and son haven't had a decent relationship in a long time. He started getting noticeably distant from her when he was 8, and while it got slightly better when he was about 14, it has since taken a nosedive. In my opinion, my wife has some really narcissistic tendencies. She can find a way to make anything about herself. She even did this when we found out about our son's mental health struggle and attempts, despite her admitting that she never went through that. Sorry for the rambling, on to my question. Our son is currently in his last year of college and has been applying to unis and other forms of higher education. Like almost every student, he has a dream school. This school is oversubscribed and ridiculously hard to get into. The course he wants to do for his undergrad has 28 spots. This is a well-known school in my country's capital city, so you can imagine how many applicants there are. Last week, my son came to me sobbing. He was so overwhelmed that he couldn't even talk. He just handed me a letter. It was his acceptance letter for his dream school. I just hugged him and let him cry and told him how proud I was of him. Fast forward to yesterday, the topic of funding our kids' education came up. Like how we would split costs for school clubs, trips, university, and college. During this, my wife said she had no idea what our son's university tuition would cost, or if he's even going to a university. I knew his yearly tuition cost £14,000, so I told this to my wife. She asked how the hell I knew this. I told her that our son had been accepted into his dream school, so I knew the exact costs. She started freaking out and asked me when this happened. I told her that he got the letter last week. She started yelling at me for keeping this from her. I told her that our son came and told me of his own accord and that it was his news to share with who he wants to. Here's where I might be the a-hole. I then told her that it was her fault that our son didn't share this with her. She asked me what I meant, and I explained that they didn't really have a relationship and that her ridiculously high expectations for him drove him away. She then stormed off. Looking back on it, that probably was way too harsh. I know that she's going through a lot right now and probably doesn't need reminding of her relationship, or lack thereof, with our son. I still stand by my point. So am I the a-hole? Edit. Sorry for the confusion about the fees not adding up. The school is private and separate from UCAS. That's why the tuition is so high. Not the a-hole. Her reaction to her son being accepted to his dream school was to get angry because of how she found out. That tells me everything I need to know about her. Congrats to you and the kid. Hard work pays off. I thought that as well. She never even gave any indication that she was proud or impressed or happy for him. Not the a-hole. Maybe it was a little harsh, but you're right. It was your son's free will. If your wife doesn't bother to have a great relationship with her son, it isn't your fault for pointing it out. Congrats to your son for getting into his dream college. You seem like a great dad. No a-holes here. Her past actions have consequences. She can't expect anything more. Though maybe try and encourage your son to let her know, out of courtesy, about huge things like this, such as university, work, etc. Especially if she's going to be paying towards these things, that gives her a right to know. He by no means has to share personal things with her though. This is fairer. She can't expect to be told about decisions that affect her finances. This was a conversation about how they would be splitting costs for son's school, and Opie's getting all it's his news to share or not about it while asking for thousands of dollars a year to pay for it? You can't be all you don't deserve to know these things, your bill is $8,000. Come on. Would like to hear the other side of this, honestly. Until then, I think it's no a-holes here. And that's the end of this video, folks. As always, leave a comment and hit like and subscribe. And if you want more of this content, turn your notification on to get updated on the latest videos. And I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe.